Thank you, Commissioners, for this opportunity to present to you the Bright Park Master Plan implementation. My name is Amy Latome, and I'm from Verde Design. I'm a project manager for this Bright Park project. With me also tonight from Verde Design is Pat Healy. We're going to go through where we're at in the Bright Park plan stages for this project. You can go on the next slide. As you may remember, in January 2024, we had a community meeting. Then in February, we came and presented to you where we're at with the concept plan for Bright Park. We took the feedback from that community meeting, from the park commissioners, from the city, and we implemented the following into that concept plan. We added more landscape areas. We added more accessible walking and running paths. We changed the location of the swimming pool. We added seating to the splash pad. We added an amphitheater. We added more restrooms. There's a larger maintenance building. The maintenance yard has a separate entrance. The location of the outdoor classroom changed, and we also added a ninja course. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. As we were making those changes, the city was working on obtaining grant funding, and they obtained $15 million in grant funding from the Outdoor Recreation Legacy Partnership Program. This program is managed by the National Park Service and funded by the Land and Water Conservation Fund. It's a competitive program. It matches up to 50% of the project total, and it assists communities providing outdoor recreation opportunities in urban areas. Because we received that grant, it enables the project to be built without construction phases. However, it does delay the start of the construction to November of 2025. Go to the next slide. So this, you're looking at the master plan as it stands now. You can just keep clicking. We changed the location of the pool and the parking lot. They switched locations. We added a larger maintenance building and a separate entrance into the maintenance yard. In the plaza area, we added the amphitheater and terrace seating. There's seating around the splash pad, and the restroom configuration changed. We added the fitness stations and a ninja course on the east side. We adjusted the location of the outdoor classroom and the tennis courts. We added more planting, and then we added restrooms to the restroom or the concession building in the center of the park. Yep, you can just keep. So again, just to give you some context and location of where these elements are in the park, north is Riverbank Road to the top of the page, and south is Carey Street. On your west side is Todd Hunter Avenue. We have your aquatic center on the northwest corner, your maintenance yard, and your dog park. Then we added parking, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We have your fitness stations, your outdoor classroom, your tennis courts also on that east side. We added a ninja course. There's going to be an extra basketball court added, your 3 softball fields, your all-weather synthetic turf field, and then your natural turf fields. So one of the elements that the city asked us to analyze was the amount of parking that would be needed for Bright Park. Their goal is to hold tournaments there, softball or soccer. And so we looked at the available parking that's there. We used a matrix to figure out how much parking would be needed. And based on the elements that are at the park that the city wanted and the community wanted to incorporate and the space that we had, we were allowed to and put in the following parking. So existing is showing the 47 stalls at the playground that exist. Then on the north end of the park, we added 28 stalls there that are nose-in parking. Underneath the aquatic facility, we added 62 stalls. 8 of those stalls are going to be accessible. 18 have future electric vehicle charging stations. That number for accessible stalls and EV chargers based on code. We also added a vehicular drop-off to that parking lot because of the community center location. We felt that it needed that for safety for kids and ease for parents to drop off the kids at the community center or the plaza area. Then you have the south parking lot that has 150 stalls, 12 accessible and 34 future EV charging stations. That gives you a total of 240 additional parking stalls. So a combined total of 287. And then just so you're aware, the staff and operations people have their own parking, so they won't be parking in those public stalls. One of the other things that the city asked us to look into was the circulation paths. There is a DG track there at the park already. It's important that the school have a place to walk, and the neighbors and the community also wanted that place to walk. So we've outlined a couple of paths. In red, the large loop is the perimeter loop, and it's almost a mile. It's 82 hundredths. Then just for ease, you have the east-west pathway that's a quarter of a mile. It'll be an easy one to mark for school to use. You have a little more than a half a mile in yellow around the softball fields, in blue around the lighted soccer fields. The north-south pathway is 15 hundredths of a mile. And then around the soccer and south parking lot, you're almost a half a mile loop. The site amenities on site, so you know where things are. On the softball fields, there's going to be 3 5-row bleachers at each softball field. And then along the east side of the synthetic turf soccer field, there's going to be 3-row bleachers there for spectators. Then in the plaza area, there's terrace seating in the amphitheater. There's a seat wall around the splash pad. Then there's shade structures throughout the park. So there's shade at the swimming pool. There's the amphitheater and picnic shelters. You have your existing picnic shelter down at the playground already. Some of those shelters have tables as indicated by the picnic table symbol. Then there's going to be park benches throughout the site at various locations by the fitness equipment or on the east-west pathway, but in the dog park. Drinking fountains are spread out throughout as well, one at each dugout by the tennis, at the aquatic center, the plaza areas. And then also we place bicycle parking at major nodes throughout the park as well. To give you a closer view of some of these elements of the park, we're looking at the dog park and maintenance yard that's along Riverbank Road. We have a large dog park and a small dog park. Each of those dog parks are separated and have an entry gate. Inside the entry gate is a drinking fountain that has a pet fountain, a dog waste bag dispenser, trash can, and then inside, one more gate, you get into the dog park that has concrete nodes with benches and trash cans. You can also see the nose in parking that's along Riverbank Road. And then moving over to our maintenance area, we have that 4,300 square foot building. Inside that building will be office space. For staff, it'll have a second story loft that will be and can be built out for additional offices. That building will also house the equipment, large equipment and storage. You also have an electrical yard that's used. I'll have the transformers and the light controllers. You have your recycle and trash area, your staff parking. You have a storage material area that's for things like the decomposed granite and the infield fines, mulch. We also have the pool mechanical building. We put it in the maintenance yard so that when the chemical trucks and other trucks need to service that and service the swimming pool, they're not bothering the neighbors. So they can just pull into the maintenance yard, do their thing at the mechanical building, and come out. So these are renderings of the 3D model that we produced for Bright Park. On the left is the image of the small dog park. You can see that concrete node with the bench and the trash can and trees surrounding it. The top picture shows those gated entryways that have the drinking fountains with the pet fountain and the dog bag waste dispenser, and then the trash cans, and it's separated by a pathway. The bottom picture is the large dog park looking north. You can see that there's a planting area to get that natural feel into the park. Next, we were talking about the plaza area. See the numbers. We have our terrace seating and our amphitheater to the north. Then you have your 3 picnic shelters. Your splash pad is in the center of the plaza. The restroom is to the south. And then number 6 is that vehicular drop-off that we talked about earlier in our. The restroom building, it was important for the city and the community that they wanted single-use restrooms. So there are 4 family all-gender restrooms on the south side of the building. Then on each of the men's and women's side, there's 6 fixtures. And on the north side, that's closest to the splash pad, are 2 outdoor showers so that people using the splash pad can go and rinse off. These are renderings of our 3D model. On the right are the picnic shelters, and that same model is similar to the one that exists at the playground that's there now. You can see the seat wall that's surrounding the splash pad. You go to the next. These are more images of the splash pad. One of the requirements for the grant was so that the splash pad had a nature and riparian theme. And so you can see we did that by having cattails and coho salmon slide and rocks that spurt water and a spitting frog, and really kind of fun elements that when you're there remind you of the nature that's right over the levee, and will be a great amenity to the park for any user that uses. The next element is the amphitheater and terrace seating. This amphitheater can be used for concerts or outdoor movies. It can also be a stage when the tournaments need to present their awards and trophies. The terrace seating are concrete steps that are 6 feet deep, 2 feet concrete, and then 4 feet of synthetic turf. We have built-in companion seating. So again, a great amenity to your park. Next, we're going to look at the aquatic facility. Mentioned earlier, it's on the corner of Todd Hunter and Riverbank Road. Excuse me, you have your spectator seating along Todd Hunter. Then you have your lap and fitness pool, the wading pool. What's not shown in the wading pool is that there will be interactive elements in that shallow end. They're to be determined, and so we didn't want to represent them and get people excited and then not have them in there. You have your on-deck pool storage. That's for things like your lane lines and your pool covers, those large. Your mechanical building, we talked about earlier. From this side, the lifeguards will be able to access it. They'll access pool storage for things like boards and lifeguard buoys, equipment that's needed for the pool. And you get into our aquatic facility building, where there's the community room, the staff offices, and then we have our changing area. These are some images of the pool. You can see that there's a lot of deck space so that there can be lots of group parties. Lots of people can enjoy the pool. Like I said, what's missing from these images are the interactive play features. So this is an image, one more click, of the aquatic facility building and the changing room from the pool. So you have your community room and your staff offices, and then you have your changing area. And then as we go into this next slide, which is the footprint, you kind of need to mirror it so that now on the left is the changing area. So you have exterior showers, your locker area. You have 2 family changing rooms, and each of those changing rooms is an indoor shower. And then you have changing rooms and water closets that are all gender, so anyone can go and change in whatever room is open. In the middle of that changing area are your community sinks and your dry station. And that whole thing is covered by an overhead shade structure. Then there is a gate into the pool. If you have a pass, you can flash your pass at the reception window. You don't have to enter the building. But if you do enter the building, you're gonna go through the lobby and then stop at reception. You'll move over to staff offices and your lifeguard station that has first aid. There's storage there, there's lifeguard lockers and a staff restroom. Coming out of that staff area, you have public restrooms that again are all gender with a community sink. You walk down the hall, there's a storage area for your tables and chairs that can be used for your community room. The community room can be split in half so that you can have 2 rentals at the same time. Both of those areas can walk out to the outdoor patio, and then the outdoor patio can let onto the pool. The gate that's showing on your right would be an exit-only gate park. They won't be able to enter the pool that way. And then the last thing on the footprint is the meeting room, and that can be used for staff meetings or officials, tournaments, small group gatherings. So these are renderings of our changing area. I'm going to start with the picture on the left. You're looking at the locker room and then that brown kind of privacy screen in the back. And then you'll see the maintenance gate. You click one more. So that's the side along Todd Hunter. The image to the top, you look at the outdoor showers, the family changing room, and also the lockers. The image on the bottom is more inside, so you can look at the family changing rooms. It's your typical changing room, your all-gender water closets, and then your community sink. And then you can see that big outdoor shade structure in that top image as well that covers all those. The next images you see are from the street and parking lot looking towards that aquatic facility. The one on the right shows the locker room or the changing area from Todd Hunter. Below that shows the entryway into the pool. Then you have the facade of the aquatic facility with a lot of windows that you'll be able to see out of but can't see into. And then at the bottom picture, you're looking from the plaza towards the aquatic facility. So those double doors you're looking at are the meeting room that we put. Now we're going to talk about our play fields. You're seeing an image of our 3 soccer fields. On the left is our lighted synthetic turf soccer field. This field is regulation size. It's 70 by 120 yards with about 15 feet of space around the striping. You have a perimeter fence that is all the way around that synthetic turf field. And then on the south side, you have fence that goes all the way down, as well as safety netting so that the soccer balls don't hit the cars in the parking lot. On the north end, that safety netting is in the penalty areas of the regulation field, both on the lighted natural turf and the lighted synthetic turf. We're showing a variety of field striping here just to give you scale and also what could be done. The striping will be determined on the needs of the league and the city and the tournaments that are being played. That lighted natural turf field is regulation size, so you have 2 full-size soccer fields. The grass natural turf next to Todd Hunter Avenue is not wide enough for regulation field, but you can see that it can fit a lot of other different youth fields. These are a couple of perspective images. This is looking northeast towards the elementary school Club West, Burbank Road. See some. As I mentioned, you have your safety netting that's in the penalty area. You have your 6-foot perimeter fence. Your concession building is in between the soccer and softball fields. Your spectator seating is along that east side. Your permanent striping. Click on the next. Now this is looking west towards Todd Hunter. So you're looking at your natural turf fields. You can see again, we have that section of safety netting where the penalty area would be on a full-size field. You can see our sports lights, the perimeter fence that separates the natural and synthetic turf. Our concession building, as I mentioned, is between the soccer field and the 3 softball fields. There's going to be 2 concession windows. The concession will have its own storage, and then softball will have a storage area in this building. There will also be 2 all-gender family restrooms and a utility space that's housed in this building. This is an overview of our softball fields. We have 3 300-foot outfield lighted softball fields. Each of those fields has a chain link dugout. You see the concession building in the center. Our fitness stations along Riverbank Road, outdoor classroom, your tennis courts. It's important to note that these fields are multi-use in the sense that you can have youth baseball, you can have girls softball, you can have adult softball. The outfields could also be striped for youth soccer. Here's a closer look at our typical softball field. Each of the fields has sports lights. They'll have maintenance gates, and then there's the safety netting. That safety netting location changes depending on which field you're looking at. There's the chain link dugouts with storage, your 30-foot tall chain link backstop with a hooded chain link fence roof. You have your spectator seating. You have your 8-foot tall outfield fence, field fence. These are, again, renderings from our 3D model. The top left is an image of the dugout, outfield fence. The top right would be a view from your spectator seating looking towards the softball field. The bottom is a picture from the outfield looking towards your dugout and your 30-foot chain link backstop. And then that picture in the corner shows what that corner of the outfield like safety nets along River. And then these are images of the softball fields again. The top picture is the fence that's between the dog park and the softball field. And then the bottom image is the left field corner with, you can see the scoreboard, the foul poles, the safety netting that wraps around. In the background is the plaza. So you can see that safety netting will hopefully help keep the balls away. The other thing that the city asked us to talk about tonight was synthetic turf and natural turf. They're considering having these softball fields be synthetic turf. So they wanted us to talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of synthetic turf and natural turf. So we have long-term advantages of synthetic turf. It's playable for 360 days a year, and you have 14 hours of play per day. That's because the fields are lit, so you have a longer play day. With that amount of days per year and the 14 hours of play per day, it increases the intensity and frequency of game and practice schedules, so more kids and adults have the opportunity to play. The shock pad that will be used underneath the synthetic turf reduces your Gmax and HIC levels. There's a reduction in maintenance costs. There's permanent striping. You have a lower water cost. You have less setup. Then the disadvantages, long term, there is debris and trash pickup. There's regularly scheduled grooming. Turf does need to be replaced about every 10 years. Just a warmer temperature in general, and it does have a high cost of installation. Then for your natural turf, your long-term advantages is that it is a living organism. It's naturally cooler, it's naturally softer surface, and it has a low cost of installation. The long-term disadvantages, you have 255 days of play with 10 hours of play per day, and that's use hours. So that is because of weather. It's also because of the need for the turf to regenerate and regrow after use. It needs a little bit of a dormant season to recover. There's the ongoing turf maintenance. There's the irrigation repair. There's high water costs. There's the yearly field renovations that include overseeding, aeration, top dressing, and fertilizing. It does require the consistent application of pesticides. And then because we're talking about our softball fields, there's the infield and warning track maintenance, and then the specific equipment to maintain that infield and warning track as well. So that is the end of our presentation for tonight. I will now let you ask questions and provide feedback and comments. Do our best to answer those things for you. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Right. I I see the benefits of both, right? I mean, they definitely each have their pluses and minuses. Here in Sacramento, you do have to water the synthetic turf in a sense to help cool it down because it just is warmer. You are saving water because it's not a daily watering practice. So really what happens is when you go to the field, you wet it down, get the dust, cool it down. From a maintenance standpoint, synthetic turf is easier to maintain. And so it is hard, and I speak from maintenance experience. It is hard to maintain a playable grass field that doesn't have gopher holes, ankle breakers, doesn't have dead spots. That takes a lot of effort, takes manpower, can be done. But ultimately, the decision is going to be up to the city, what their preference is. We can advocate either way. So I'm going to leave it as vague as possible.
Okay. That's helpful. And I didn't know about the cooling down of the turf, so that's good to know. The community room, is there a capacity for that? Is that still being worked out, or do you have a?
I don't know what the capacity load is. I know that it's big enough to have. It's going to be like closed off, so there are going to be 2 uses for it. It's similar to the one that's in your community building now.
The one across the street, or the one that's at the rec?
The one at the rec center.
Okay,
I believe.
that's about.
Yeah, the one that you can divide in half.
Oh, okay. And that was, okay, next question on that, is that with that closed or open? Because when it's closed, it's like 25 to 30 people. When it's open, it's a lot. So is that the general
That's
idea?
the idea, yeah.
Okay. Oh, and then this might be something that's maybe you don't have an answer to, but I was wondering, looking at all the trees and foliage and whatever, is there a plan for what those trees and such will be? They natives, non-natives?
Yeah, so we do our best to look at the plant lists that are in the region. There's what's called WOCALs, which is a plant database that lists like low irrigation usage, it's native, non-native. And so when I do the planting plan, I look really closely at that list, because when you bring in plants that have a low water usage and then bring in a high one, you automatically have to water at the high level. So we try to keep our planting beds the same, like low level. Most trees do need a medium level, but they're on their own like bubblers, so they get watered. So there's a mixture of native and non-native plants, but they grow well in the region and are low water usage.
Okay. And I read a study once about like 100 years ago, our design like ancestors decided to plant a bunch of trees that wouldn't receive the pollen, like they male trees versus the ones that would receive the pollen.
Right.
And I've spent like a decade or two now at Bright, like with my kids.
Yeah.
It's being so close to the river. I know I have issues with like allergies and such. Has that been taken into consideration as far as like the pollen count? I know that you can't obviously like control that, but with those types of trees, is that something that you take into consideration when you're looking at that database?
I'm sure that there is a database for that, and we can take that into consideration. I mean, part of our planting plan, is to add color and all season interests. And so some of those trees that bloom obviously are going to have a higher pollen count than ones that don't. And different people are allergic to different trees. So we want to make the plants as park friendly and people friendly as possible. And so in that sense, like, try not to plant trees that have seed pods, like things like that are messy. Because again, that's park. It's a danger to kids, and they start spiking.
Oh yeah, I grew up breaking ankles on those things like my whole life, so I know what you're talking about. No, I appreciate that. And then again, it's a detail that's come to my attention, and as like an allergy sufferer, it was something that I wanted to bring up. I think that's all the questions I have for now. Oh, the amphitheater. It's I love it. The design, is it grass and concrete? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so there'll be concrete in the front and then synthetic turf.
I see.
So that you don't have to bring in equipment.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other? Commissioner Jan?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have some questions, I think, for you, and some for the city, if that's okay to ask some questions. I think because they're more specific to like staffing and things. Did I understand that the $5 million additional money received from a grant, correct?
The
15 million, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But is it 5 that's being applied, or am I just getting 5 out of my own? Okay, so the 15 million, did I understand that is being applied to the additions made to this plan, or is that not decided? Did I misunderstand, or am I understanding that correctly? There were some additions that you said at the beginning that were made to this. Is that coming from the 15 million?
No, those are just made in general.
Okay.
The 15 million gets to be applied.
So we haven't figured out where that's going yet, correct? So it may already be spent. Okay. Okay. Excellent. Well, congratulations and great job on getting more funding. I think I've said it before, the city of West Sacramento is fantastic when it comes to grants, finding grants everywhere, getting them, applying for them. So as a citizen and taxpayer, it's appreciated. So thank you so much for that. The design included secure fencing around the artificial turf soccer field, correct? So there'll be limited access managed through the city for play and organized sports. Excellent. I think it's important to maintain, especially the high maintenance or the high installation costs. I know how much these these fields are, to, I think, it can be destroyed very quickly through vandalism. So I think that's a fantastic addition. The the electric vehicle charging stations that were added as part of the parking lot. And this is just a general question, but how difficult are those to add into the parking lots later? Can you pre-wire to expand?
So the EV charging stations themselves are not going to be part of build project, but we'll have conduit to all of those stalls so that when they get grants, put in those EV chargers, they can just pop in.
Great. So the question then would be, would it be diligent to expand the conduit to potentially expand EV stations years from now? As I think a lot of us know, our governor mandated or banned the use of sale of gasoline cars by 2035. So 10 years from now, if that stands, which I don't know if it will, but if that ban on gasoline vehicles that was mandated by the governor stays, then potentially 20 years down the road, EV stations will be used up pretty quickly on an average weekend. So just a thought or a recommendation to maybe look into expanding the conduit, since I know there'll be some cost to it, but the cost of putting, plastic conduit in now while the dirt is there versus when there's concrete over the top, for the future, it may be economically feasible to, or make more sense to do that now, to expand it to potentially more than just 35 in all the parking lots where the EV stations will be. So that was just something that I would recommend maybe looking into expanding the conduit beyond 35 station. And that's just a general note, I would say, for any new project, because of the electrical vehicle mandate. This is a question for the city. Has West Sac Play been contacted about this? Are they involved in the shade in the bike park? Okay. I mean, it might be where, I don't know if there's more like potential stations for shade, which I was great to see that there was a lot of shade included already. I think it's fantastic. If there's more areas that you could potentially use shade structures, I think West Sac Play is an option to, I know they like to be involved with, I don't know how much they have to spend. I can't speak for them, but I know they're a nonprofit organization that was originally developed to provide shade for parks that are in need of shade. I don't know if they would be willing to be involved or maybe do some sort of fundraising for the Bright Park project. I don't want to speak for them, but it's just an idea. How much local job creation and staffing will be expanded along with this project? Does anybody know? Like, is that part of it, like to increase maintenance staff, or are we going to use the existing staff that we have within the next 2 years? Yes. Okay. No, that's great. I think that just speaks to the understaffing that we have now. Like, this is coming down the pike. I would imagine it would open in 2026, is kind of 2027 sometime. We have 3 years or so to plan for that staffing expansion. And then, of course, running the pool. And I mean, you're essentially doubling up what we have at the rec center, right? Is the way I kind of look at it, which is fantastic for the city and the people that live here, but I think it's important that we as people and citizens are aware that, hey, there's going to be a cost to run these facilities, to keep them nice. And hopefully people accept that and do that. So that's great to hear that the staffing will be increased and hopefully to the adequate level, not not kind of getting what we can. So I'm in full support of that as well. I mean, I don't know what I can do as a commissioner, but anyway, you have my support. The distances from from home plate to softball fences, do you know by any chance how far those are in terms of feet?
Base length from home plate
To the fence, yeah. I'm just wondering because it's a multi-use field.
Yeah, so the outfield's always going to be 300 feet.
Okay.
What will change will be the base, so be 60.
Is that 300 to left and right?
300, yes.
Or-
Left, right, and center.
And center is all 300. Okay. All right, so I might want to be considered in terms of the age limitation of, like, adult baseball probably wouldn't be an option. right? I know we have Bridgeway Lakes field is kind of used for the juniors, you know, over 12, but under high school age, so like 12 to 14 or 15. Youth baseball is limited at Bridgeway Lakes because, you know, adult baseball you can hit a baseball potentially 350 feet, right? And then you've got these hardball rockets landing in the pool. So, because I just noticed the fence height was like 8 feet in some areas. So, just something else to consider too. I mean, obviously, like girls softball and even adult softball is probably safe. I don't think it would take quite a beast to hit something more than 300 and something feet, I think, but it is doable. I've seen it. But either way, it's softball. I'm pretty sure Chris could probably hit it 315, 320, you think? Yeah. But I mean, yeah. But it seemed like a left field or something was taller, right? Where the pool was.
Yeah, so there's the safety netting in certain areas so that if there is that fouled or hit hard, then
Yeah,
so
and that's
that doesn't
30
hit.
30 feet up. So the
Yeah.
potential of it hitting into the pool area as the parking lot is we're thinking about.
Yeah.
Okay, but I would definitely say no, something to think about, a no hardball for adults there. That, like I would limit the youth. I think Westsac Little League does that now in terms of the age groups. The juniors have a certain field that they can play on, and that might be taken into consideration for the softball. As far as, this is my last piece, but as far as synthetic turf, did I hear you say that gophers are not an issue on that, or are they?
Under synthetic
Yeah.
turf. So under synthetic turf, you have your pad, then you're gonna have amount of base, and then you'll have your chemically soil more than likely, and so the gophers are gonna have a real hard time getting through
Okay.
all of that through.
So it's not impossible, but it's unlikely. Okay. So, I mean, I don't know, I think that's a pretty good case for synthetic turf, because I know gophers, you know, it's like Caddyshack out there. I don't know if, is that a pretty old reference? Am I dating myself? But yeah, I know out there, there's been some issues with some gopher holes in those fields. And with the youth soccer fields being natural turf, and the issues, you know, not the issues, I shouldn't say that, but the ongoing difficulties with staffing. You know, I think it's just going to be an ongoing thing of just having to try to get enough people to maintain these parks the way that we want them.
Mm-hmm.
I think personally, I would recommend a synthetic field wherever possible. And that way, the staffing that we do have and the fertilizers and all of the materials needed to maintain the natural turf, the focus can be more laser focused.
Yeah.
And I know that the soccer clubs have come and spoken a lot at these meetings, and I just want to make sure that their voice is being heard, in that there's a desperate need for those play fields. And I would hate to see all those youth, especially the youth fields, right? I mean, to me, I'm all about youth sports as much as I am into adulthood, but definitely kids first. And I would hate to see those fields not be usable because we just don't have the time to maintain everything.
Right.
So I would say that, for me personally, heavily leans me toward using synthetic where possible, so that youth soccer can be utilized, those fields can be utilized as that full 255 days, and they're not utilized 150 of those 255. So then, yeah, I think those are my recommendations. But great presentation, thank you.
Thank you
And
so
thanks for
much.
hearing me out, everybody. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Ramsey?
First of all, let me try to get through this. I seem to have something in my throat. That was an excellent presentation,
Oh, thank
and I
you.
like the way you lit up everything as you talked about it, so we could actually get some conceptual ideas about it
Yeah, good.
while
Thank
you were at it. How large did you say the amphitheater was going to be?
So the structure itself is like 30 feet by 50 feet. And then the seating capacity for the terraces is about 75 people.
Like a good-sized quinceanera?
Yeah.
And that's it, huh?
Yeah.
It's not really concert size. at that.
Yeah, I mean, it's small, like an outdoor, a small concert, like your neighborhood band or something. But as far as like seating 200 people, not in that space.
Well, that would be one of my recommendations, is any way you could expand that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really can't see too many get-togethers that would be an adequate space, What about all the roofs that you have everywhere? Are you thinking, are those going to be solar paneled or anything?
We have discussed that with the city.
Good.
As of right now, they are your standard metal roof structures. I think when we discussed it with the city, it was something that needed to be discussed further. I also think it was budget driven as well, that conversation, because it does take a lot to install that. And then what do you do with the solar? Like, obviously you want to put it back. And then that takes different type of electrical equipment, all that. So it's a conversation that we need to talk through with the city and see.
So it's an ongoing discussion?
I think it was tabled, but we can obviously bring it back up if we need to.
Because especially you're setting up more electric outlets for cars, and where is all that electricity going to come from? Magically appear,
Yeah.
That's, it may be something to think about, in the future. Yeah, 10 years, not 20 years, is 2035. Fortunately, I probably won't be here. Well, I mean, just matter of factly. Okay, one thing really appalls me, and that's how casually you mention pesticides or chemical treatment when there are nothing but kids playing out there. And also on artificial turf, I agree that it's probably good, but you said chemically treating it underneath. All you got to do is put down cardboard. All you got to do is put down cardboard for a few months and everything's gone.
Well, the chemical treatment in the soil is a soil stabilizer. So it's lime, and what it helps to do is stabilize the soil so it doesn't this. So it's not a chemical like pesticide that leaches up. It's to stabilize the soil on the base so that you don't have undulation.
And I would wonder about the makeup of the artificial turf also. I don't know if you've heard recently about don't use black spatulas, don't use any black, because everything that's recycled plastic that's black comes from our computer. That's what it's made out of. And I don't want myself, I wouldn't want, these are children. What are you exposing them to? I think it's real important to find out exactly what the makeup is of the artificial turf.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that y'all ought to look into more healthy ways of dealing with stuff other than pesticides, because I see those guys spraying all over. You got to wonder, they're walking around like this, spraying away without their masks on, and it's already affecting them. When is it going to stop? But you did an excellent job.
Oh,
Whoever put the presentation together, whoever that was.
It was me.
Oh, well, you did it. You did a bang-up job.
Thank you.
Any more comments from the commissioners? All right, Vice Chair Galvan.
So next, we just turned in what we call our 50% construction documents sent to the city. And we will have, we being Verde and our architects in the aquatic design group, maybe our electrical engineer, we'll sit down next week and go through what we call page. So we go through the entire set. We talk about comments that we've received from community meeting and from this meeting, any questions, how there's anything that we're missing, how to move forward. Then we'll work for 8 to 12 weeks to get that set to a level that gets turned into the city for the city to review in their engineering and building department. And then that comes back with comments. And then at that point, we'll fix those comments. And then I believe it gets turned over to city council for their approval. And then bid set. And so I don't know if they'll review that set. But as far as like community meetings go, I think we're done. That's where we're at in that process. Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Thank you. My only comment is I'm excited about Bright Park.
Great.
As a lifelong resident of Broderick and Bright, and someone went to Bright Park as a kid and played soccer and baseball there.
Mm-hmm.
A long time coming, so I'm super excited about construction to start. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Oh, yeah. It's just basketball. Yeah, Kaboom is staying. Yeah, no, that's the one, that south parking lot and the Kaboom playground. There's an existing bathroom and the basketball court. That's staying as it is, and then basically everything else around it is gonna. Mm-hmm. They will be electrical outlets, and they'll be lit. Mm-hmm. So there's a ninja course that's by the basketball, and then there's 1, 2, 5 like individual type exercise stations. So one's like a thing, one's a balance walker. Then there's kind of one that looks kind of a full gym shape that has like rope pull. And then there's pressed. Mm-hmm. Is there a Yeah, I mean, we haven't really talked about it yet, but I think probably the intention, unless the city disagrees with that, would be to use a match, kind of a similar style to what's at the Kaboom ground, so that it doesn't look mismatched. Because the last thing we wanted to do is have the Kaboom playground, and then you have everything else, and it looks completely different. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great.
All right. Thank
Wait,
you.
sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just one thing. I just had a question about the parking on the south end, the 150 spots. At the community meeting at Riverbank, I showed up late, but I saw a bunch of sticky notes talking about the size of that parking lot.
Yeah.
And after thinking about it a lot, I kind of saw what they were saying, right? And I guess my biggest thing is like that was in the old design. That wasn't there, right? The playfields were extended and there was other things, but that was added to accommodate hosting tournaments, right?
Tournaments and league play. Yeah.
Okay. And I kind of like, from what I understood from some residents was that it was, you're kind of using or allocating a lot of the park's footprint to parking that may not always be used year round, or maybe, mostly empty for most of the year, or most of the time that the park's being used. And I couldn't help but, looking more into that and learning more about that, and learning about how a lot of cities are actually undoing a lot of that, a lot of open, parking space that they have, and they're, filling it with development and stuff like that. And I look at even here, we have that issue with in places like Safeway or Rayleigh's or even Walmart or Target or any of those places where pretty much none of those parking lots are ever full. I can't help but think, is it a waste of space to have such a big parking lot for, when it's not always going to be full?
Right.
You
So your trade-off is hundreds of cars parked on the street and your neighbors getting mad that they're blocking the driveway, right?
Mhm.
So when we put together the parking matrix, and we looked at, okay, how many players and coaches are there per team? How many spectators and referees are there? And then like car ratio, like we have this like built out. So like if you take the U6 fields, which is your smallest field, technically there's room to stripe 14 fields. But as far as tournament play, to have any parking left over of the 287 that we have, you could only stripe 6 fields. So you can't hold like this huge youth tournament and have enough parking. Now that's just soccer. There's other people that want to use the playground or the aquatic facility or the softball at the same time as this youth tournament. You're already deficient in parking. So we, as we looked at it and studied it and designed that, we looked at, hey, what's the best way to balance this? Because we don't want Safeway parking lots or Walmart parking in your park where the parking is just left empty and you have concrete junk. But we also don't want to overwhelm the neighborhood or have people park illegally. There's also the Alice Norman playfields to the south that could use that parking lot as well. And so we really tried to look at the surrounding areas, the availability, and balance that with what you wanted, with what the needs are, and here's what we came up with. So yes, on a weekday, it's going to seem like there's a lot of parking. Like I've been to Bright Park on a weekday, and those 47 stalls at the playground are not fixed. But during a weekend, when it's busy and nice outside, my guess is you're going to have a parking lot. And so that's the catch of it, right? Like knowing that it's limited, but we're going to get the most for what we can and use the best resources that we can to make the best kind of decision and the best design. That was.
Yeah, no, I was just curious because even, the parking situation there isn't perfect, even on weekends. And I played for the club here, I coached in the club here, so I was there on weekends pretty much all day sometimes. And, parking wasn't great, but I was always able to find parking on the street next to Bright. I've never had to park in front of somebody's house, even on days when every inch of grass was used for games. So I get, which is why it's like, in terms of league play, I wouldn't really see the need to add more parking, maybe for tournaments, but at the same time, it's like, I guess there's that trade-off where it's like, if tournaments are held, even if they're held once a month, which is a lot, that parking would really only accommodate that once a month. And to me, it's just a lot of space that can be used for anything else. I know I saw that volleyball was very popular and underrepresented. It could be beach volleyball courts. Commissioner Archuleta mentioned something about creating a walk space that was specifically for seniors. He mentioned something about like having special ground or whatever so they can walk on, right? That can be an area for that. But I don't know what everybody else thinks about that, but I just can't help but
Yeah, I comment.
I have a question. On that note, because I totally hear what you're saying. But I think as a parent of young children, one of the things that I struggled with my children was parking. Having a parking lot does make it easier. I'm not a fan of parking lots at all. And like, if I could do alternative means of transportation, I try, but the reality is, like, on a weekend going to Bright with my little preschooler, it's like I usually park at Riverbank. And thankfully it's close enough for the preschoolers to play at Alice Norman, so I can do that. I was wondering from a design perspective, because I know that parking is, like, I've heard across the country and across the world, people haven't really figured out how to kind of balance this idea of like wasted space and parking. Is there a way to design, the way you design the baseball, softball fields to be multi-use, is there a way to make it so that you can recreate on empty parking lots in a safe way? Because I know liability is an issue. Right. Obviously, you can't play volleyball on concrete. Well, you can, but cities don't want that. But is there a way to kind of accommodate this space while it's not being used during the week?
I mean, that would be an operations park side.
I'll have to talk to Jason.
A note about our parking lots that probably haven't been put up yet. There's a middle island in our parking lots that are acting as bioremediation. So all of that water from the parking lot is flowing into the and being treated. And then it'll get released back to the stormwater system. So it does, in a way, serve a dual purpose. So, we're aware of that. That's happening in both the pool and the South Park remediation. And so, yeah, like we know, right? Like, I'm a landscape architect for a reason, because I like the outdoors and I love plants and horticulture and being in park spaces. And but parking helps people enjoy space. That's the
We kept you up here long enough. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our public comment.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Amy, correct? Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I'll stick to my 3 minutes. First, I really wanted to thank the city for the great community meeting. I thought the meeting was both great and also the presentation was great by Verde. I want to acknowledge Aaron and the grant that we got, because a year and a half ago, I think the project was like $50 million. I think we had 30 or 35 secured, and that 15 kind of ensures that we can go one phase. We don't need to phase it. We don't need to cut things out. And that's, I think, really good for all of the different groups. I wanted to note a couple of things from the first community meeting. We brought up a lot of comments, and I really appreciated the attention to detail, the fact that a lot of those comments were addressed. For example, the parking lot and the pool were flipped, which makes it more accessible to all of the other groups. I think the message that we had at the first community meeting was like, realistically, all the groups are losing field, right? We're going from 2 adult softball, 2 youth softball, and 1 baseball down to 3 softball, right? Soccer is going from 2 11v11 dedicated fields, 2 9v9s, 2 7v7s, 4 4v4s, and we're losing an 11v11. We're losing probably 2 4v4s. But is there a way to compromise and then use these spaces as multi-purpose spaces? So in the context of that, I really like the idea of the synthetic turf for the softball, because it expands the number of hours that you can use in the days, right? You go from 255 to 360 and from 10 hours to 14 hours. And I think that's not only good for softball, but for a lot of other sports that could potentially also use those spaces. The one question that I would have, and it would be for Jason, is how easy is it to stripe those? Because I know the comment was made that, I think his preference was to keep all of the synthetic turf green plain color so that they can be striped. And I'm just curious how easy that is. It's not a deal breaker. I'm just curious about that. My other point was that in terms of soccer, I mean, the club isn't looking to host a ton of tournaments, but I also don't think that this space is going to be the space where you host a ton of soccer tournaments. Like, you can't host an 11v11 tournament with 2 11v11 fields, which is fine. I'm not complaining. My My only comment is that this isn't going to be the solution for the city, right? This is one little development in the context of all of the parks and recs in the city, and really it's a part of the puzzle. So it would be great to have a soccer complex or a vision like other cities of a network of fields that are high quality throughout the city. Besides that, again, I appreciate everyone's time. We'll have comments again for Verde through the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Item number 3, consideration of approval of the minutes of the October 1st, 2024 meeting of the West Sacramento Parks, Recreation, and Intergenerational Services Commission. Have someone move
I
it?
move.
All right. Do I have a second? All right. Item was moved by Commissioner Ahmad and seconded by Commissioner Ramsey. All in favor? Perfect. All right. We're going to go ahead and move on to regular agenda. Item number 4, workshop on administrative policy, parks and facility naming.
Well, good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. My name is Peter Ibrahim, Capital Improvement Manager in the Capital Projects Department. Tonight's workshop will cover City Administrative Policy IX-A-2, Park and Facility Naming Policy. So the agenda for tonight, we'll look at the objective of tonight. We'll look at the background of this policy, and then we'll talk about the updates to the actual naming policy itself. We'll look at the proposed naming criteria that is part of the update, and then we'll go to recommended action and next step. So the objective tonight is to share information and seek input from the Commission on recommended updates to the park and facility naming policy. A little bit of background. As part of the annual strategic planning workshop, the City Council provided direction to staff that the park and facility naming policy needs to be updated. One of the main objectives of this update is to combine both parks and facility naming into one holistic policy. Now, historically, park naming has been a separate process from facility naming and has occurred as part of the development process. Now, this administrative policy was formalized in August of 1998, and the last revision was August of 2004. The current process for renaming a park allows residents to complete an application, after which the application is reviewed by the Parks, Recreation, and Intergenerational Services Commission with final approval by the City Council. The City Council also requested that the update to the policy include the representation and land acknowledgement of the local indigenous tribes. The proposed update. Looking at this from a very macro standpoint, it is the policy of the City of West Sacramento to utilize a consistent process to encourage public participation and ensure community input in the naming of city facilities. All renaming requests are reviewed and approved by the City Council, and a written set of procedures ensure that there is a consistent approach to naming and renaming. So now I'll move to general naming criteria. Now, one of the updates to the policy includes a general naming criteria stating that all names should reflect the diversity, equity, and inclusion of the West Sacramento community. New names should intentionally broaden the representation of people in our community. All names should first focus on local West Sacramento significance, but names that reflect California or a national lens may be approved if applicable to West Sacramento by direct or broad association. In selecting a new name for a city facility, the proposed name must align with either a geographical location, a park feature, a commonly known historical figure or event, an individual with outstanding accomplishments or service to the city, a person or organization that contributed to the acquisition or development of the facility, or the representation and land acknowledgement of local indigenous tribes. So additional naming guidelines. Additional naming guidelines include that if nominating an individual, the individual or family, if available, must approve and pay for a background check of the nominated individual. City staff will use applicable resources such as historical documents, the West Sacramento Historical Society, to verify any historical claims that are made. A sign identifying the facility is the standard form for recognition of a park or a city facility. Signs must comply with the current facility signage standards. And once a facility has been renamed, the facility name change will not be considered unless the City Council has determined that continuing to use the current name is not in the community's best interests. A portion of a facility within a facility can be named separately from the facility. Renaming process. So the recommended policy updates include two different types of renaming processes, one of which can be either City Council initiated or resident initiated. The City Council initiated renaming of a park or facility can occur at any time and requires a request for a future agenda item to be placed on the City Council agenda. The City Council may discuss and approve a renaming at a City Council meeting without seeking community or commission consideration or feedback. Now, the resident-initiated renaming of a facility begins with the completion and submission of a city facility naming application to the city clerk, who then checks the application for completeness and provides a copy to the City Council members. If a council member is in favor of proposing the name, they must request a future agenda item to consider the application at a future council meeting. If a community feedback is desired, the Community Relations Division will lead the outreach and feedback process. Feedback will be collected and presented at a future council meeting. This commission here will review the proposed name and provide feedback on any facility under the Parks and Recreation Department's jurisdiction. And of course, as reiterated, or as mentioned before, the City Council has final authority over naming any city facility and may override decisions made by city staff or commissions. So final considerations. Again, the City Council has final authority and may override staff or commission decisions. Renaming on school properties requires approval from both the City Council and the Washington Unified School District Board of Education. Physical recognition, such as plaques, should follow the normal budgeting and purchasing processes. Now, recommended action and next steps. So tonight, we're here to seek input and seek feedback from the commission on recommended updates that I just covered that are in the agenda report. And we hope to take this to City Council on January 15th in the upcoming year. And with that, thank you.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to open it up to the commission for any comments. Commissioner Jans?
I just had a question regarding some clarification. So understood the City Council will have essentially the autonomy of approving or denying applications with the recommendation of the commission, correct?
Yeah.
The application without seeing it, and I understand the background behind it of creating an umbrella for all the policy. I agree with that 100%, that it should be inclusive for everything. It should be the same. Is there any weighted system that the City Council can determine whether one recommendation or part of the application weighs heavier than another? And then the other part of that is petitioning. There's no petitioning involved, meaning an applicant does not have to go to the citizens in the community and get their input or signature of a certain number or anything like that, which I find could potentially lead to some conflict within the community without having to produce community buy-in on the naming process. Meaning if you're not at a meeting when the naming application is being submitted or reviewed, you essentially find out that your park or whatever that was named 100 years ago after a citizen who did something very wonderful for the community is now updated to somebody who in the last 20 years has done something great for the community. Again, I'm just trying to play a little bit of an advocate here for having people maybe potentially going in that area of the renaming facility, the park, the facility, and having to request signatures and buy-in from the community to produce that as maybe part of the application. Just wondering if that might be recommended or considered.
I think I'll answer kind of your first question, but in terms of weighted, the criteria that's set out, so there's a criteria of, I believe there's 8 criterias that I went over briefly. So that would essentially be the kind of the weight. And the application has a question that does it list how the proposed name meets at least one condition of this set of criteria. I think that's how they would approach the consideration for, naming or renaming.
I'm sorry. So that last part, I'm a little bit unclear on. So the application asked if which one of the 8 criteria is being considered, or whether all of them are part of it.
At least one.
So only one of the 8 criteria needs to be met to request the name.
Yeah, at least that's the proposed recommendation.
Yeah. So that kind of feeds into maybe a little bit more stress on the second part of my question. Okay. With that?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I mean, okay. Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not well done. It is, and I think it's a great thing. There's 8 pieces of criteria, and only one of those needs to be met to request the change. I just want to make sure that the community is heavily involved, because, our memories only go back so far, right? I mean, there's some parks that are named now from people who did a lot in 1950. Okay. I mean, yeah, again, I'm just advisory, right, recommendations. I'm not saying like this is how it should be done. I'm just throwing out some potential, if someone wants to rename Memorial Park, for example, that was built back in 1950, they want to rename it. They only need one thing in the application to get it considered, versus going around that neighborhood and saying, hey, we would like to change the name of Memorial Park to David Jan's Park because he was a Little League president back in 2018. Thanks a lot. I'm just kidding.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay, well, that's good. None of the other ones are working, so
Yeah.
I figured it wasn't even worth trying. So
Again, I think it's a very well put together application. I completely see it. I just, as long as the community can be involved and be made aware prior to a decision being made, however you determine that to be, I just want to make sure that that is a big part of the process, that people are made aware, and if they want to speak their voice, they can come to a meeting, they can write the city, whatever your process you determine is the best way to involve the community in that. That's just kind of basically the gist of the point. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. And I think it's always important to remember and note that the city is still relatively very young, as old as my sister. So I think, like you mentioned, not having certain things that haven't been codified or memorialized. I know I've only lived here 15 years now, and that comes up a lot. So I appreciate that you all kind of looking into this and figuring and kind of packaging it together, because from a citizen's perspective, when you are engaging a city, sometimes it's really frustrating when things aren't really worked out. And it's kind of like, oh, this is past practice. It's not necessarily not codified. So I appreciate that, given my own experiences. This is totally unrelated, perhaps, but I was wondering, so how are streets named? Is that
development process.
planning commission?
Yeah, it's through community development. We don't.
I don't touch that. That's all you, right?
Yeah, no.
No, not successful
Separate
either.
team.
Okay, I thought that was
Yeah.
under community development.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's something my kids always are like, well, who named that? Like, so I'm like, I have no idea. But I appreciate it very much, and I have noticed. I was just thinking, like, top of my head, I'm like, oh, a lot of West Sac parks are just like street names or something, right? Like, there's Gateway Park and there's Westfield Park. It's really, other than Whitey, I don't think a lot of them come to mind that have like names. So yeah, I appreciate that very much. I think this is very informative for me. Thank you.
Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Ramsey?
Yeah, I'd like to know who pays for the background check that you said?
The background check
applicant?
would essentially the applicant. Yeah.
So, not the person that, like, if I wanted, it wouldn't be the person because the person might have passed away or something, but it'd be the individual?
The individual that is, the resident that is requesting it.
The applicant.
Oh, that might stop you.
If it's a person, right? Trying to name it after
Yeah.
tribe or something.
Yeah.
All right, any more comments from commissioners? No? Okay, go ahead.
That's one of the criteria is any the greater good, like any individual who has provided outstanding accomplishment for the good of the community. That was one of the criteria that was listed. Yeah.
Well, it's the initial naming guidelines section on number 5. I can't see very good. Or number 4. Once a facility has been renamed, the facility name change would not be considered unless the city council determined that continuing to use the current name is not in the community's best.
But I thought that's not a greater.
And the phrasing is that the current name is not in the community's best interest. That's the phrasing. That was my wording, is the greater good. But it's, yeah, the current name is not in the.
And that's where the city council will make the determination, right? I mean, you've got all the members on the council that'll determine if, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, any more comments from the commissioners? No? All right. Are you looking for a vote on this?
No.
Is there a vote? No? Nope. All right. Thank you.
Feedback. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, that's going to take us to general administration functions, part 2, the director.
Okay, now that my mic works, I can do it. Good evening. My name is, I just have Erin Ayala. I fixed that. I had Rivas down still.
Woo!
And I'm the Parks and Recreation Business Manager, and I'll be giving the director's report for tonight. The West Acre Park project was put out to bid in October. Despite a well-attended job walk for prospective contractors on October 8, we only had one responsive bid. So we put it back out. So we've extended the bidding window to December 12th with a construction contract expected to be awarded sometime in January, fingers crossed. We did actually get like a $3 million, or 3-year extension on the grant agreement from State Park, so we're still fine. We'll be fine. The Alice Norman Park Master Plan RFP for design should be live in the next few weeks. It kind of got hung up in finance for review. So we're hoping to get it out sometime in December with a firm selected in January of 2025. This is something new. So we did a little site visit to Alice Norman Park, and we went to talk to West Sac Girls Softball. And they are getting donated from Clark Pacific their prefab dugouts. So I was thinking it'd be really cool if the city came up with a match. And so Aaron Laurel gave us the blessing on doing a $35,000 grant for West Sac Girls Softball to fund a second one. It hasn't been approved yet by council. We're going tomorrow night to get it blessed. but we're super excited. I know the master plan is going to take a little while to implement, so this will at least give them something nice in the meantime to enjoy. And I think with the prefab, we'll be able to reuse it when we have the master plan. We'll have it set up so that we can reuse the dugout. I'm pretty excited. The November 14th stakeholder meeting for the Bright Park Master Plan Implementation Project was well attended. We had over 45 participants, and the meeting was generally geared towards pool users and sports groups. The Del Monte property acquisition and general report is going to go tomorrow night as well, and the city council will let us know if they approve the purchase. The city hall, just so everyone knows, for the holiday is going to be closed, and the community center between December 25th, reopening on January 2nd. The rec center is going to have modified hours. They're going to be open on 12/24 from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., closed on Christmas Day. Then on New Year's Eve, it'll be 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., the modified schedule, with the same schedule on the January 1st. And the Parks Department is going to have limited staffing during the time, the admin staffing, but Jason's guys are going to be, ready to go up in the queue if something happens. So we'll be able to prepare for any weather events that occur during that time. And just so everyone is reminded that the city clerk is now accepting applications for commissioners. And please be sure to get your application in if you're planning to continue. And that concludes the report.
Thank you, Erin Ayala.
Welcome.
All right, that's going to go ahead and take us to Commissioner Communications. Do we have any Commissioner Communications? All right, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank the city. I noticed and I don't know how far behind I am on it, but the lit tennis courts over the rec center. I noticed it a while ago. I don't know when exactly that happened. Maybe I noticed it because it's gotten darker a lot sooner now. I'm not usually driving down Jefferson Boulevard at 9:30 and 10 o'clock at night. Anyway, thank you. I know that was going way back to Tracy Michael, director. I mean, that was going a ways. That's how long I guess I've been on the commission, but it's gone way back. And to see it actually be there, and then also seeing people using it while it's lit is really cool to see. So I just wanted to. I know the commission, some of the people, I don't know if we're a part of that, and we've been talking about it for a while. So thank you to everyone involved in that. This might possibly be my last commission meeting. I'm not 100% sure yet if I'm going to reapply. So I just wanted to thank everybody just in case. It's been February is officially the last meeting. Well, see, I already blew it. Well, but the application is due by the 31st, right? So I have to decide whether it's my last meeting pretty soon, but you may still see my face next year. So we'll know by next year whether it's my last meeting in February or not. But I have to make that decision pretty soon. So that was my last thing, was to, if you had fun. I know that the Parks Commission is heavily sought after, at least it was when I applied last time or the year before. It was like the highest applied commission. I don't know what it's looking like now. But if you want to stay, you have a good idea of what the parks is like. I've had a lot of fun. I think it's 5 years now, maybe 6 years I've been on the commission. I don't know. It's been a while. But I've got to know a lot of the city staff, and then you kind of build that relationship. And then there's a history involved too. Like you get to the tennis court lights, you get to kind of feel like you've been a part of that. So I've really enjoyed it. So if you want to stay on the commission, December 31st, and to anyone who's watching or whatever, if you want to be a part of the Parks Commission, fill in your application, submit it to the clerk, yes? Yep, right? The city clerk, yes, not the commission clerk. As much as I'd like to, but yeah, city clerk. All right, thank you so much.
All right, Commissioner Ramsey?
Yeah, when we were here last meeting, John Robinson presented, or told us he was unable to present at that time, a 2024 age-friendly action plan update. I read the thing I read his 50-something page draft, maybe more than that, I don't know. Anyway, came up with quite a few changes that I felt needed to be made. And we had a meeting on October the 30th. And I mentioned some of these things to him. hopefully he took them into account. Hopefully he's getting some of this done instead of what I saw that was given to us, because I felt like personally I was kind of insulted by a lot of the comments made in that plan, and I don't know how many of you read the plan, but it was, we can assume that all 70-year-olds want the same thing as 50 years old. I went, really? There were a lot of assumptions made of us, and what I gave him was two different things. One was done by YOLO Commission on an age-friendly plan, and one was done by AARP. And both of those had goals set out, goals and structure that, hopefully he incorporated, because he isn't here tonight, so maybe he's still working.
He'll be bringing it back to the commission in February.
Okay.
All right, any more commissioner comments?
I'll just say that I'm really sorry to hear that, because I think we forget sometimes that there's an I in our commission, the intergenerational part of it. We talk a lot about parks, but there's really not a lot of representation for the I. So thank you for taking the time to read that and for providing feedback, because it's certainly important to me, and I'm sure it's important to the rest of the commission. So, and I apologize for the offense that you took in some of those parts.
And I wanted to say also, yeah.
No, I'm done.
I wanted to say also that I continue to be on the YOLO Commission on Aging and Adult Services, and they have taught me a lot of things that can be done, and I can see that, part of this commission should include those that could include more of the age-friendly intricacies, rather than just the cracks in the sidewalk. Oh my God, which any age would be worried about those, but apparently that was the number one concern of older people in West Sac, according to the report.
Commissioner Ahmad?
Thank you. I would like to acknowledge that our, as many of you, I think everyone here probably knows, that we have a wonderful art gallery across the street, and there's currently an artist being featured for the first time that I know of, who's an African-American artist. There'll be a reception next week on the 12th, next week, from 6 to 8 p.m. And I especially want to highlight that because of our community's growing Afghan population. There's a lot of youth here who are of Afghan origins. A lot of them are refugees or first generation. And it's been, and I really want to praise Kiara and the staff over there, because I think it's when in many cases, representation does matter. And so I think for folks in this community to see that their art and their homeland being displayed is pretty special. So I invite everyone. It's up for your reception. It's to the city, 6 to 8 next week on Thursday. I'm sorry, am I saying next Thursday? The following Thursday, the 12th, whenever that is. So it should be fun. There'll be a display of a lot of Afghan, Central Asian, Persian cultures, poetry, music, food. So I encourage everyone to attend. Thank you.
Any more commissioner comments? No. All right, we're going to go ahead and adjourn. Do I have somebody who's going to move? All right.
I second.
Commissioner Jan's motioned and Commissioner Ahmad seconds. All in favor? All right, this meeting is adjourned.